Hi, and welcome to a brand new show called New World Seder. I'm Ron Furman, your host. So nice to have you here. New World Seder is basically a new world order. But we're going to be talking about Jewish issues that may not affect you, but affects me and affects my crowd. So I figured, why not? Let's have a show. On today's show, we have an amazing and incredible young lady who is an inspiration to a lot of Jewish people around the world. I'm not just saying within Israel, but they still don't know her that well in Israel yet. But they will very soon. I have the pleasure to have Lauren Isaacs on the show. Hello, Lauren.
Hello.
Welcome, welcome. I love the green screen in the background. It's hiding just the right stuff. Right?
Exactly. I positioned myself strategically.
We're starting right away with a conflict. Right away, we're like, oh, you're hiding the wrong thing. But hey, if you know anything about history, they built that on top of Jewish monuments. And to be quite honest, if they can't even admit to the fact that it ever existed, then why should we, give them the benefits and have fun with it? So I'm so happy to have you on the show.
Thank
Lauren,
you.
So first off, why don't you talk to me a little bit about who you are and how you got into the world of activism? So for those that don't know, Lauren Isaacs is an activist, an advocate. I don't know what type of title you really want for yourself, but you've just done so much, and I'd love to hear a little bit of the story of how you got into it.
Awesome. Well, first of all, thank you for having me on the show. It's amazing to be here. Always wonderful to have a conversation with you, Ron. As for title, Lauren will do. You can also call me the supreme ruler of the world. But if you don't like that, activist is great as well. Basically how I got into activism, I went to Israel for the first time when I was 20 years old, and I fell in love with the country. And I couldn't, the connection was palpable. And once I came back to Toronto, I never say once I came back home, because home is Israel, as a Jewish people. But once I went back to Toronto, I had to do something with that connection to the land. I knew there was some responsibility, some intrinsic thing as a Jew, as a Zionist. There's a responsibility and a desire to fight for the land, to love the land, and to spread that love. So I got working with a couple different Israel advocacy organizations. And ultimately, I ended up with Cherut Canada, which is the organization that I am the director of now in Canada. And it's wonderful. And we work with our Cherut branches around the world, World Cherut and Cherut UK and in the US and everywhere. And we are unapologetic Zionists, and we love it.
This is wonderful, but I have a question for you. You make it sound like as if every person goes to Israel decides, you know what, I'm going to become this advocate. I'm going to dedicate my life to the state. Unfortunately, it's not like that. And there are many people who have taken advantage of the amazing birthright trips, or, been with their family, or even if they did something like March of the Living, and they don't feel as connected, even after going to the Holocaust Memorial and whatnot. Why is it you feel that you decided that this is something for you? Because I don't feel this is something so, understandable. Maybe it is for me because I was born in Israel and I have that connection. But for someone like yourself who has lived in Canada for most of her life, please explain where this passion came from.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. There's definitely some people have stronger connections, some people weaker connections, some people develop connections to the land later in life. But to be honest, first of all, I'm an eternal optimist. So I do believe that every Jew, every Zionist does have a connection in them, no matter how latent, no matter how quiet. And one day that spark will turn into a fire, and everyone, will go forward and develop a connection. We can only hope and wait. But as for myself, my personal story, the way I see it, our ancestors fought for years and years and millennia. They fought and died for this country, for Israel. And most of them in the history of Judaism did not even see Israel revitalized. They didn't see it reborn. They were never able to step inside the country. All our ancestors who died in the pogroms, in the Holocaust, in the Inquisition, in the Crusades, they fought and died for this land, right? So there is a bit of responsibility. There is some love that's been transmitted through our ancestral history to me. And yeah, if I'm able to come to it, Israel is free and unified and accessible now, thank God. So if I'm able to defend it in any way that I can, if I'm able to visit in any way that I can, I absolutely feel a responsibility and a desire to do that for the country and for, our ancestors going all the way back.
You speak so eloquently about your love for Israel and your connection, and I love it. And I wish there, like there were more people out there who were as fiery as you are. It's probably the red hair that you have, that's bringing that energy.
Gingies are crazy.
Oh,
What
right.
can I
Well,
say?
listen, there's a lot of other things I could say about Gingis, but nonetheless, no, you're very fiery, and it seems like your parents did a really good job by instilling that love for the state of Israel. And there are many people who sort of live a mundane life where Israel has no connection to them. Last week, I had a show where I was talking to Mayor Weinstein, and we're talking about like 60% of the people are currently, 60% of the Jewish people are intermarrying. And it's becoming a big problem because, it's slowly but surely the whole being Jewish and being, pro-Israel and whatnot is going to disappear. And it's a big, it's a big hurdle for us to possibly like jump over in the future if we don't move to Israel and we don't have that connection. And do you feel that, and that was a little bit a part of the motive to want to go and connect with Israel? And because currently, if you want to tell everybody you're spending a year in Israel away from activism here in North America, and you are living sort of your passion, and the words that you speak out here, you're actually living them right now in Israel. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, thank God. As for just what you mentioned about the intermarriage thing, that's a tragedy. And that is a responsibility of every Jew, I believe, to make sure we counter that by marrying Jewish, by procreating as much as we can, and by raising little Jews and Zionists, to care about the history, to care about the nation, to care about the land going forward in the generations. And yeah, of course, that's definitely part of the motivation. One day I want to have children who can call themselves proud Zionists, who will have this free, accessible country that they can come to anytime they want. They can live here, they can visit here, whatever. And, that's very important. In Jewish history, there's never been a safe place for Jews other than the land of Israel. This is our home, no matter how far we are in the world. All Jews on all corners of the earth, they know that their home is Israel and their safe place. Oh, I hate the phrase safe space, but the safe space for Jews is Israel, right? So we know that, and it's important not to take that for granted. If we know that, we must live it, we must embody it, and we must perpetuate it so that the future generations also care about it and know how important it is. This land is our land, and we need it. We need it.
See, everything you're saying is, I'm with you. I'm on the boat. I might even help the captain. But there are a lot of Jewish people out there who don't feel the same way. There are a lot of Jewish people who sort of feel, yeah, I'm Jewish. My parents are Jewish. Yeah, that's my background, but I don't have to align myself. I live in Canada. I live in the States. Everything is good for me. I don't see color. I don't see race. I don't see religion. I just see people. And I have a feeling that that's going to bite many of those people in the ass. And, there's a saying that if you forget who you are, someone will remind you at the wrong time. And I just feel like it's almost like I'm sitting there on the sidelines waiting for it to happen. So how are you doing, your type of activism? Like, how are you directing your activism towards those that are apathetic when it comes to Israel, or apathetic about even being Jewish and the responsibility that we have as Jews?
Right. And it's a huge challenge, and it's a huge problem, the apathy that exists in the diaspora, even in Israel. Jews all over the world are not connected to the land, to their identities. And as you say, it's very sad, and it's very dangerous for the future of Jews and Zionists, because we're all we've got, right? If we disconnect, the generations will just dwindle down and lose our identity to anything. We'll just assimilate as we have in the past generations, and we've seen how that has worked as we've assimilated throughout history and the catastrophes that have ensued after mass assimilations. So it's super important that we remain connected to our identity, our Judaism, the land of Israel, which is a part of our identity, whether we like it or not. But yeah, some Jews are not connected. When I'm doing activism, you got to know your crowd, right? You got to tailor what you're doing, and that's important. There's a saying in the Talmud that is, you come for the wrong reasons, but you stay for the right reasons. And I think that's important in tailoring activism when you're not sure if people even have a connection to Israel yet. Sometimes we have events that are, trivia events, fun game nights, Israeli trivia events. And that's great if people want more of lighthearted stuff. Sometimes we have booze and schmooze with alcohol and pizza, and sometimes people just come for the alcohol and pizza. But maybe they get some education. Maybe they get some connection to Israel. Maybe we talk about our shared experiences, who's visited Israel, who went to Tel Aviv Beach, who did this, who did that, and maybe they find a little spark that connects them. And that's all we can do, right? We can just keep educating, keep doing activism, and keep trying to get people connected in any way that they can. If someone loves falafel here, that's good enough for me. That's a good enough point of connection that maybe they'll develop an even deeper love for the land.
Well, what if, people haven't been to Israel? And I can understand, I used to lead birthright trips to Israel during the Second Intifada. So from 2000 to 2005, I was leading trips on a regular basis, and every time we had an issue with numbers. And at that time, I kind of can understand as a parent, clearly many parents don't instill the love for Israel the same way your parents did or my parents do. So how important is it to come to Israel in order to love the country and understand it? Because there are many people that advocate for the state of Israel here, and I feel like by being in Israel, they would be more advocates. They'll be able to offer a lot more because they could talk about the smell, they could talk about the people, they can bring the things that are not necessarily on CNN and Fox News. So how is it that we can convince those that live abroad to have that connection to Israel without, actually stepping foot in Israel?
Right. And I think that's a challenge in and of itself, but I do think it's important. I think it's crucial that people do come visit. I mean, as a Jew, you should, at some point in your life, hopefully, please God, be able to come visit under whatever circumstances. The connection that people feel, it's definitely more tangible, it's more real when you do step on the land, right? Not for everyone, but it does help. And for those who haven't come, there's, you don't need to be in the land to know the importance of it for identity's sake, for our history. I mean, what's happened to the Jewish people for the last 3,000 years, what our nation and our identity and our peoplehood center around, Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel. You don't need to be here to understand the import and the weight that carries, the importance of all this stuff. So yes, absolutely, I encourage people to come. It makes a huge difference. And there's no way, as you say, to describe Israel properly unless you've been here. Every description of Israel that we give for people who've never been here, it's insufficient, right? It's like trying to explain color to a blind person. You have to be in Israel to really feel it. But if you haven't, there's no reason why the importance and the knowledge of the connection shouldn't be alive and well. I mean, I only came to Israel for the first time when I was 20 years old. And yes, that's when my spark turned into a roaring flame of connection. But before that, of course, I knew about Israel and the land and the importance. I'm a Jew, and therefore Israel is central to my existence. And we must kind of stoke that fire, especially in the generations to come, of how important that is.
I think you're amazing. I think that the work that you're doing is it's phenomenal because, it's sort of, I'm going to say something that's going to sound a little bit weird, but work with me here. It's almost like when you have someone who is an unexpected advocate, like usually when you think about advocates, you're thinking about a, broad shoulders man kind of yelling and like standing there, like sort of like a mayor, right? Like a Mayor Weinstein type character, right? And here you come in sort of like, sweet girl, red hair, glasses, and you speak so nicely about it and you're so passionate. I think that's why many people love working with you, that you have that passion. And the one thing I want to kind of put it in a bottle and like bring it, show it all around, to every school. You too can become an advocate. But right now, we're in a state where coronavirus is going on. And this is where all the trolls and the anti-Israel people are, at their best, trying to get information, misinformation, propaganda online. So why don't you tell me, how is it that you currently are working as an advocate, knowing that, there are many people at home listening to or watching videos that are completely false, because I believe that advocacy never stops. So what is it you're doing right now, aside from clearly doing interviews like this, when it comes to advocacy? And you're doing it from Israel, so it's a little bit harder to maybe connect with people abroad, because in Israel you would expect people to love Israel, right? I mean, it's your country. So
right.
what is it that you're doing right now in terms of advocacy during quarantine time?
Right. Well, first of all, I'm glad we are doing this despite, the coronavirus and what's going on. You and I are more than 6 feet apart right now, which is good. Unfortunately, though, I love being in your studio, but please God, sometime soon. But yeah, online, it's difficult. I guess there are two parts to that question. What we're doing for activism is the same thing we've been doing the whole time, videos, educational seminars, discussions, interactive kind of platforms using different social media platforms where we can talk to people, answer their questions, really get in. You know how kids are being homeschooled right now? We're doing the same thing. There's no reason the education and the love for Israel should stop just because we're at home. As for the anti-Israel kind of evil that creeps out of the woodwork during this time, I think it's pretty prevalent, and we've seen that the anti-Semites and the anti-Israel people, they really take advantage of online and social media to spew their hatred and their falsities right now. And I mean, we've seen there's been an upsurge in anti-Semitism since coronavirus. For obviously, Jews are being blamed for ridiculous things, and Israel hate is as powerful as ever. So it's even more important that we stay online. We reach out to new communities. For example, tomorrow I'm doing a Zoom conversation with students from an Israeli university here. The majority of them are not Jewish. So that's very important. We're reaching out to different demographics, different groups of people, and trying to keep them educated. Just talking about the basics, keeping it simple, keeping the passion alive. And we're not only contending, when we talk about the anti-Israel stuff that's happening, we're not only contending with our regular enemies of Israel, the transparent ones, we're talking about the self-hating Jewish groups who are also taking advantage of this time and going online and spreading their lies and their egregious claims about Israel. The fringe groups that are very dangerous and insidious. So we're working to counter all that stuff while still being positive and proactive in the Israel sphere. But please God, this coronavirus will calm down soon, and we'll be able to do more in-person activism again. But online, thank God for Skype and Zoom and FaceTime.
No, it's great, and I think that we actually have now so much access to be able to really touch people. We don't necessarily need to be around people. I've been doing shows like this for a long time to try and get to the masses. Maybe I've been unsuccessful, but the work is still there. What I want to talk about is being Jewish is, first off, I'm going to take pride in it, but a lot of it has to be with the idea of having debates. Having open debates, there's a saying, right? Ask two Jews, for an opinion, you're going to get 15 opinions, right? Just from two people. Because that's the way we are. We like to debate, we like to talk, we like to converse. But during these ideas, we also do a lot of it publicly. And, the media has been a little bit unfair, I think towards the Jewish community, especially the religious community. Now, I'm not going to say that unfair because, some of their actions has been questionable, and I've got in trouble for speaking up against them in some ways. But I do feel that there has been a little bit of imbalance, and the other side, the anti-Israel haters, are loving it. And they're loving it because look at them, they're gonna self-destroy each other, and we don't even need to do anything about it. How do you feel about this debate that's done publicly now among Jews, where there's sort of these conversations need to be had at home, but we're now having the access to talk about it publicly? Do you feel like it's serving us, or do you feel like it's deterring us from doing our job as advocates?
I think it's done a great disservice to the Jewish community, and this is just my opinion. It may be an unpopular opinion, but I think it's a great disservice to the Jewish community, the fact that we've been fractured and squabbling amongst each other online and in public. You don't air your dirty laundry in public, but because of this coronavirus, everything's online now, and people have just decided to kind of come online and spew their internal thoughts. No matter what they're thinking, they let it come out of their mouth, and they post it on Facebook, and they go on video, and they go on these rants. And I don't see how it's helping the Jewish community when we're attacking each other. The religious are attacking the secular, and the secular are attacking the religious, and everyone's pointing fingers at one another. I don't think it's good. how would that ever be good, for our community as a whole? And as you say, it just gives more fuel to the fire for anti-Israel people. They can sit back and say, we don't need to do anything. Look at the Jews. They're hurting themselves. It's not a good image. We have a responsibility to portray an image and, to uphold the standards of our community. So to fight amongst each other in public, it's no good. It's no good.
I have a question though. I don't consider myself fighting with my Jewish fellows in public. I mean, I'm on the other side of this because I believe that I believe it's a healthy debate. I believe it's something that shows us, that we are different from the other side. It's like whenever I see, like Islamic fundamentalist, going crazy, I don't see the Muslim community standing up and saying this is bad. And I'd like to see that. I'd like to see them going against the extreme. And when on our side, I feel like there are some, a little bit of extremism that's going on. And we're not even talking about, Judaism versus Judaism versus Judaism versus Judaism. We're talking about how to act, like in this world. And when you're seeing people that are breaking the rules, like, they're saying, hey, I mean, I would scream at my neighbors, when the kids are out, playing where they should have social distancing. Like, I feel like we have a responsibility. So
right. I definitely agree.
So I feel like our job is to show that at the end of the day, I still remain Jewish. I still have to have that debate, but I could see the other side. For me to sit there and not understand that it is somewhat hurting us will be a little idiotic, because I know that it is in some ways putting out dirty laundry, but I'm trying to come to some sort of solution to sort of say, hey, we're responsible for one another and we need to be a little bit smarter. And if you do that, then clearly I'll be back on your side. So do you believe that there is somewhat of a positive or all negative? And the reason I'm bringing it up is it sounded to me that your entire thought process behind it's like this type of dialogue isn't good for advocacy.
I think we agree on the fact that I'm a proponent of free speech to the nth degree. I will disagree with what you're saying, but I will fight and die for your right to say it. Right? Mm-hmm. So, of course, I don't believe in censorship, and I don't believe that we should be stopping the dialogue or the debate. Of course, debate is healthy. I think we totally agree on that page. I think the only thing we're disagreeing on is how much of a percentage of the, say, religious Jewish community has been disobeying, the social distancing laws versus other communities. I think there's been an unfair light shined on the religious community. People who are violating the laws, whatever, absolutely, we should talk about it and we should condemn it, and that's what we should be, standing up together 100%. Everyone should be, social distancing and whatever. But I think, for example, when we see these pictures of New York and a lot of the Haredim in New York are being criticized, where there are secular non-Jews sitting in parks, congregating, but people are less inclined to point to them. I just think it's a matter of how frequently we're pointing to the different groups. But I think all groups who are violating should be called on it. And I totally agree with you that we should be having that debate. I just think the Jewish community has been pointed out unfairly. And I think that's what's doing the disservice to us.
I agree with you 100%. I think we started off by saying that the media has been a little bit unfair because, especially now where I don't have to turn on CNN, I could just go on my Facebook page and see all these videos of other Jewish people recording other Jewish people. But I think the problem here is that, because they're dressed a certain way, it automatically says Jew. So meaning if I walked around in a park, only if you knew me, then okay, there's a Jewish person walking around. But because, there's a specific look and they live in specific neighborhoods, and it's very easy, if they're living in this one little neighborhood, we know what's coming from there, so they're sort of an easy target. But I don't want to talk too much about them. I just want to say, is it all right for us to be able to have an open dialogue, because that's what Israel's really all about. And now that you're living in Israel, you're going to notice that there are people who are in parliament. I mean, not that you didn't know beforehand, but there are people in the Knesset who are citizens of Israel and are anti-Israel. Forget about the fact that they have a different opinion on what they should do and the media. They're anti-Israel. How does that make you feel as someone that currently lives in Israel, coming from the diaspora, trying to help? And and by the way, I'm not only going to talk about the Arabs who are in parliament. I will say that there are many Jews in the Knesset who are anti-Israel. And it's a lot it's about the actions. when I forget her name right now. I'm having a brain. You know what? She came out of jail. You know, the one that hit the officer. I can't believe I'm forgetting her name right now.
Oh, Ahed Tamimi?
Yes. So thank you very much. So when Tamimi came out, you know, there are certain people that went to greet her. You know, Jewish philanthropists who went to greet her and to say that she's a hero. You know, these are business people, but there are many people in Knesset who looked at her as a hero. I mean, it's just it baffles my mind. So how do you feel as someone that comes from Canada to Israel to volunteer, to help, to have these Zionist ideals, and to know that the country that you're fighting for has these type of people in office? How does that get to you?
I hate it. I hate it. Let's be honest. It irks me. It bothers me, you know, when I see these. Let's forget about the Arab parties who are, you know, demonizing Israel from within. Talking about the Jews, you know, who are against Israel. I want to vomit when I hear these things. And I'm just being honest. But, you know, that has been the history of the Jewish people always. I mean, look at, you know, where we've come from. And I think it also, there is something to say for taking for granted what we have. You know, people who sit in Israel, and this is not exclusive to the Jews or the Israelis. People who sit in a country, the country's phenomenal, it's flourishing, it's democratic, it's free, people are wealthy, and people hate it. And they try to tear down the country and the values that built that country and the structure underlying what's making that country phenomenal. People, it's not even taking it for granted. It's kind of a delusional thing saying, I want to destroy everything that's made this country what it is. And that happens here in Israel with people trying to tear down the wonderful fundamentals and the values and the ideals that built this land. Just like in America, when people, you know, fighting against the government and saying America is the worst place ever. They live in America and they love it and they take advantage of all the amazing opportunities America affords them, but they sit there and say, I hate it. So it's the same thing, I think. People kind of get used to where they are. They take it for granted. And then they build these kind of sometimes delusional ideas in their head of, we can destroy everything and make it better, or we can just destroy it for the purpose of destroying these values or these tenets. And obviously it's self-destructive. It's self-destructive, and I hate it when I see, you know, people in the Knesset fighting to harm the country of Israel, fighting to harm values that we fought for thousands of years to build up and achieve. It makes me sick.
I totally agree with you on this, but there's a saying that I've been hearing lately that almost old Zionism is dead. That you don't have, you know, even when it comes to the leaders. I mean, the reason people vote for Bibi is because, you know, he's the last of the Mohicans in some ways, you know, from like the old school, you know, like we don't have Sharon, we don't have Peres, we don't have Rabin, we don't have Golda, we don't have Begin, we don't have these big names, you know. So like right now you have, you know, I'm not going to give my political opinions on this, but like a journalist, you know, who decided that he's going to get into politics and now is playing, you know, the political game. And we're forgetting that there's a lot more to Israel than just the politics. Like, you know, Zionism is really what put us, I mean, we're forgetting the roots of the country. We're forgetting like why we have a state, why we need to protect it. And now it's more, you know, like about, well, how much money am I earning, which is reasonable, right? Everybody needs to be above, you know, the lower class. I mean, it's understandable, but we sort of are forgetting that, you know, at any point in time, this could be taken away from us. So what do you feel you're doing? And I'm actually saying you are it. You are Ms. Zionist, and I love it. And, you know, and you don't just talk the talk, you're clearly walking the walk. But how do you see the future of Zionism playing a role? And do you feel that if I were to say to you that in 100 years Israel will not exist, how does that play in your mind?
Oi, God forbid, do all the superstitious things to undo that statement that you just said. Well, you know me and my optimistic views. Israel is eternal. The Jewish people are eternal. So that would never happen. Thank God, please God. We're all praying. But, you know, as you say, I just want to focus on something you did say before, that old Zionism is dead. And that's, I think, the major problem. I think you hit the nail on the head. When people look at Israel nowadays, they're not looking at it through the lens of the Zionists and the ideals that built the country, you know, 70 years ago. They're looking at it as, oh, Israel is whatever. I want to go there to get a job and work in a startup high-tech industry and go to the beach and make money, as you say. that's not Zionism. Zionism is a movement. It's a state of being. It's ideals that built a nation, you know, and we do need to focus on that and kind of get back to that. Yeah, we don't have the big names anymore, and some of us, those names are phenomenal. Those people really built, they started and built the country. Thank God that we have today. But as you say, Bibi, whether you love him or you hate him, he does, you know, kind of espouse this, these remnants of ancient Zionism that you were talking about, which I think resonates with people. People like hearing that, they like feeling that, and maybe that's one of the reasons why he's so popular for what, 11, 12 years that he's been in power. But it's important to, when we're doing activism and education, that's exactly what we're trying to do. Educate about true grassroots, on the ground Zionism. Zionism is not, you know, coming to Israel to eat shawarma and ride a scooter on the boardwalk. That's great, that's fun, but that's a holiday that you can have anywhere. Zionism is, you know, Herzl. Zionism is Golda. Zionism is Jabotinsky, and everything they did for the land and the values and the morals and the people that they built here. And that's so important in education. That's what we focus on at Klerut. That's what we're focusing on in our education. Because, you know, it's great that we have high-tech industries and drip irrigation and whatnot. But any country could have that. There's more to Israel than that superficial stuff, right? And as you say, it's kind of lost nowadays, sadly. So I think it's so important that we reconnect to it, because what's Zionism if it's only a beach and food and music? That's nothing, right? That's any culture anywhere around the world. Zionism is so much more. It's so much more.
How do we get people to become as active as you are? I hear the passion and like I feel amazing when you talk, and the reason I feel amazing is because I'm Israeli, so a former Israeli.
Yeah.
I've been living abroad for over 30 years, but you know, like I lived there for 10 years and I loved it. I speak the language and I'm very connected, but I can understand how I'm connected. It's sort of like, you know, being connected to Canada. I live here. How do we get other people loving Israel, advocating for Israel, when there is so much negativity that we're seeing from, you know, from the internet, from people on the streets, even if you're seeing from Israel, I mean, the signs that I'm seeing that are coming from Rabin Square. I mean, there are times where I'm thinking like, what country is this? Like, there are times where I see more Palestinian flags, you know, in Rabin Square than I see Israeli flags, and it saddens me. Not that I'm anti-Palestinian, but like that flag and what they're standing for doesn't stand for the Palestinian that I think they should be standing for. And also you're seeing like a religious community within Israel, living in Israel, having Palestinian flags and saying death to 72 years of dictatorship. How are we able to overcome ourselves in some way to be able to find those next advocates? What do you think should be the core to bring them in?
Right, that's a great question and a very complex question. As for the people, first I'll just address the people, you know, the religious who are waving the Palestinian flags. Obviously a very small minority here in the country, but it's disgraceful. And it also speaks to kind of the delusions, as we were talking about before. They live in this country and they, you know, take advantage of all the opportunities that are afforded to them and the safety and the freedom and the wonderful successes. And then they stand and chant for the destruction of a country. It's insane, right? It's almost incomprehensible. As for, you know, what we're doing outside to get people connected, I mean, it's so difficult, but you know, I'll just say education is the number one thing. Getting people to visit the country is so important. As we said before, there's no connection like the connection when you step off the plane and your feet hit the ground at Ben Gurion Airport and you really feel it. It speaks to so many people. I mean, I've spoken to countless people who've said just landing in the airport, you can feel it. It's different. Nothing feels like this country, right? And, you know, fighting the anti-Israel activists within and outside the country, it's challenging, but that's part of our job. Our job is to love Israel, right? Our job is to defend the beautiful, beautiful movement and country and nation that is Israel. Our job is not necessarily to deal with every single crazy that comes along and waves a destructive flag. You know, last summer, I don't know if you remember, there was a Hamas banner hung at the Temple Mount, right? And at one time, there was a Palestinian flag that was hung over the old city walls in Jerusalem, both last summer. I mean, it's disgraceful that this is happening within the country, right? Destruction from within. And that's a huge challenge. I think it's even more of a challenge than dealing with enemies around us. We pretty much mastered the enemies around us. Thank God. Israel is, the strongest country in the world, ideologically and militarily. The danger is within, and within the country, and within the nation, within the religion, within the ideology. That's where the danger is. I think I agree with you in that it's terrible to see these images of people, parading, holding Palestinian flags, Jews, other people, secular Israelis. It's very difficult, but that's why education is so important. There's a lot of ignorance out there. There's a lot of misinformation, erroneous beliefs. We have to keep educating so that the next generation can be a little smarter, can be a little more connected, can have a little more truth, and therefore they can develop their own connection to the land.
I would love to leave this conversation with some sort of activism, right? I mean, the one thing that I'm different, I think, than a lot of other people is they have conversations and they go, okay, great, thank you very much, take it easy. I think the difference here is like, what can we really offer people who are sitting at home watching this and saying, okay, you know what, thank you for talking and I appreciate you being there, but I want to do something. What is it that they can do, especially now when they're not going to work, coronavirus is keeping them at home? What would you recommend for them to do in terms of activism? I would give you just like a little bit of my opinion, and then I want to hear you. The one thing is, this is your time to educate. This is the time to educate yourself. This is the time for people to learn, because today, especially, like for example, my dad is 60 years old, very, very smart man, but the internet has him fooled. Where every time something pops up, he thinks this is real. And I'm thinking, if my dad is a smart man who knows the history, anybody else can be fooled. So that's number one. And number two, I think our job is to no longer just sit there and defend. And I think that's what we tend to do a lot. We tend to always defend the things that the other side is saying, as opposed to being on the offense and trying to break it down. Wait. Look at the way they're treating their own people. And then look at the way, what do you think they're going to do to us? But now they're coming a point where we're treating ourselves badly, based on what's going on. So I believe in a little bit more offense, and I believe in education. I believe these are like the two things that we need to start doing. But I'd like to know, because you're in that field, this is something you're doing now full time. What is it you can recommend for people to do when it comes to advocacy during the coronavirus?
Yeah, thank you for that, 100%. And I love your approach. I'm a great admirer of the way you approach, advocacy and activism as well, because I agree, there's far too much defense and not enough offense. That's not to say we should go out and fight people, God forbid, but absolutely, there's no reason why we should be defending ourselves. There is no reason why we should be defending our right to exist. There's no reason why we should defend our right to have a country that's free and thriving. Like, what planet are we living on where no one else has to justify their existence like we do? So it's absolutely unacceptable. And as you say, it's high time that we stop justifying our existence and start, pointing to the real enemies, the real problems in the world. And the strategy is brilliant that you have. So I really admire that. As for us, at Cherut, we are doing that. We are being proactive. That's what we believe activism is. It's not sitting back and waiting for people to come to us or accuse us with certain things and then we defend. Not at all. We're going out and we are educating. We're taking the bull by the horns, and really we are writing, we are reading, we are learning, we are teaching, we are speaking. We're engaging the next generation, younger people and older people, it's for everyone, right? But absolutely, during coronavirus, it's obviously a little more challenging because everyone is in their homes and it has to be online. But we're running seminars online. We're doing interactive video calls. Tomorrow, as I said, I'm doing a video call with a university. We're still doing that. I'm in touch with high school students where they just write and they ask questions about Israel. And I help them give answers, how to answer these things people don't know. So it's so important that we stay on the ball, stay active. And like you say, no time for defense, no time for sitting back and waiting to be attacked by the enemies of Israel. It's time for us to go out there and show what an amazing nation we are, what an amazing people we are, what an educated people we are, and keep that going, perpetuating that for the next generation. Because if we stop now and sit back and say our work is done, thank God, look at Israel, but our work is done, then the next generation is screwed. So we really, really have a responsibility and have to keep on the ball. So we're doing more interviews, more talks, and when coronavirus is over, please God, we'll be doing it in person again and running tons of programs. We're super excited.
You are amazing. I mean, I've met many advocates working in the business for a long time, but you are something else. You're fiery, you're smart, you're easy on the eyes. Like there's something about you, and I want to commend you for everything that you do. And for those of you out there who don't know Lauren Isaacs, please add her on your Facebook, even if you want to argue, and if you want to add me into it, we can make something happen. We don't shy away from controversy. But really, at the end of the day, I want to commend you, and I want to thank you very much for being on the show and for sharing all your wonderful Zionistic ideas. And please,
thank you.
I wish to God there are more people like you out there who are doing such amazing work.
Ron, you're phenomenal. It's an honor. It's always an honor to speak with you.
Such a pleasure. Lauren Isaacs, everyone. And thanks again for being on the show. Have fun in Jerusalem and take care of yourself. Be safe. And I hope to see you soon. So when you're coming back on this, on the trip or whatnot, when they let the borders let you fly out, please come and see me. I'd love to say hello to you in person.
100%.
Right. Be safe. And thank you very much for being on the show. Lauren Isaacs, everyone.
Thanks so much.